edition of American Warrior Radio, right here on the Talk to Me station, AM 1300 WMEL, sponsored as always by AVET Project. All you regular listeners, you know this program is all about supporting our troops and their families. So whether you are a member, present or past, of the U.S. Army, Navy, Air Force, Marines, Coast Guard, or National Guard of Reserves, you are at the right place, American Warrior Radio, and this is a special edition. We're pre-recording this because we've got a lot on our plate, so if you're hearing this live on Saturday from 11 to noon, and all these matters with the government shutdown and not funding our military and veterans issues, if it's been resolved, praise God, thank you for all your help. But listen, Glenn and I are here right now in the studio recording this so you can listen to it and take action. It demands that we all take action because we've reached a critical phase in our funding of this country and protecting our country. If it were not for the brave men and women of this generation and generations past, including myself and Glenn's, we would not enjoy any of the freedoms that we have. That's how important it is. And we don't talk politics here on American Warrior Radio unless and until it steps on the foot of our veterans or active duty military members and their families. Well, guess what, folks? That time has come. Am I right, Glenn?
Absolutely, and we're going to give you some information that overcomes some of the information we gave you in the past two shows about what is and what is not affected by the government's, they're calling it, I guess, a partial shutdown, but it's getting more than partial as the days go by.
Okay, it is critical, and I'm going to give you some phone numbers here in a moment. You've got some homework to do, folks, because we say this a lot on American Warrior Radio. You got to make some noise. Well, now you don't really have a choice. Now you are forced into action. We're deputizing you. You must act, because if it weren't for our troops, we wouldn't enjoy the beautiful weather we have here in Florida, the snow in Colorado, whatever you're doing, wherever you're doing it in this country or abroad. If you're an American citizen, the time to act is now. All right, and here's why. We've been hearing on television and through the newspapers about the government shutdown. It's been we're looking at 2 weeks now. Problem is, there's no cooperation on Capitol Hill. Folks, I don't care if you've got an R or a D attached to those members of Congress you vote for, whether you're Republican, Democrat, Independent, it doesn't matter. What matters is that we fully fund our military and our veterans and their families and all the benefits that they have earned. These are not entitlements, people. These are earned benefits. It's just like you go to work, you expect to get a paycheck. Well, guess what? How much more important is it that our troops deserve the same?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, many of our troops are now living on disability payments that come from the VA due to disabilities they incurred while serving our great nation and protecting our freedom. Now it appears that might be at risk. I saw an article today from Secretary Shinseki said this in the article, that about 3.8 million veterans will not receive disability compensation next month, that the quote-unquote partial government shutdown continues through that point in time. So
give that number again. We're talking billions of dollars that must be paid that are now being threatened. How many?
3.8 million veterans will not receive disability compensation. And let me quickly throw in there, that's not the full picture. And it said other places in the article, and I didn't print it all, but that does not include hundreds of thousands of people who are on the VA pension program. Compensation is the term VA uses for those getting disability compensation or surviving spouses that are getting compensation because their veteran spouse died from a service-connected disability or was rated 100% for 10 years or longer, unless they were a POW and they were rated that for 1 year or longer. I mean, this is horrible. We're talking just on the compensation, on the service-connected disability compensation, over $6 billion in payments would be halted. $6 billion.
And this isn't some pie in the sky. This is what Secretary Shinseki, who, if I need to remind you, was a 4-star general in the Army, before he took this position as our secretary for the Department of Veterans Affairs. That's a cabinet level position. He didn't come out and mince words today on the news. He said specifically what Glenn is saying, and that is come 1 November, if we don't get these things resolved now, come 1 November, there's no money going out to the vets or so many
or
others.
surviving spouses that are entitled to payments from the VA, or those who are on pension living in an assisted living facility. Suddenly they're going to be unable to pay their entire bill. It's a real conundrum.
And what do you suppose is going to happen, people? Do you think the landlords are going to say, oh, that's fine, pay us when you can? Do you think your telephone is going to say, just pay us when you can? No, it's not going to happen.
No, exactly. But let me throw in, he did put a big caveat in there like we did on the previous show, and that's that health care will be minimally affected. So if you're getting your health care from the VA, that's going to continue.
In large part because they had the common sense, the VHA, Veterans Health Administration, to appropriate money over a multi-year period.
Exactly. They do it in multi-year is good enough. That they budget particularly the health care for.
Right, and this is the type of mind think that needs to take place for our other issues relating to veterans. Did you know that if you, God bless these families, but there are people, men and women, dying on the battlefield this week, okay? As of Tuesday, 5 more soldiers were killed in action, fighting for our country. Their bodies are coming back to Dover. Guess who's not there to greet them?
Yeah, exactly.
Their family members.
Their family members are not there to greet them. And just to show you, at least in my humble opinion, how political this stupid thing has gotten, the House passed legislation that would provide veterans disability, pension, and other benefits that we're talking about that are going to stop being paid on 1 November if this silly thing is not over with by then, or this terrible thing is not over by then. But the White House has urged lawmakers not to take a piecemeal approach to continuing government services. So the White House apparently is not willing to continue the funding for the veterans and keep them paid because that's a piecemeal approach. Well, you got to get a hold of your representatives and you got to tell them this is not acceptable. They work for us.
And they'll lose their job.
We don't work for them. They work for us.
That's a fact. They will lose their job if they don't get off their butts and cooperate and make this happen. I will share with you all, especially in this congressional district here on the Space Coast of Florida, our Congressman Bill Posey is doing a stellar job. Had some private Facebook communications with him. Some of it we published on the AVET Project Facebook page. Other portions he wanted us to hold back, but the gist of it is he's out there beating the drum loudly that we cannot skirt our responsibility to this population of Americans that keeps us all safe, which is the #1 goal. It's the #1 priority of our United States federal government, is to keep us safe. So Posey has said that the House is not the problem. Whether you want to call it piecemeal as far as the funding, however it is, the House has introduced legislation that the Senate denies each time it comes up in various forms because of the politics. Like I said, American Warrior Radio is not a political show, but now you're stepping all over our veterans and military. It's my understanding through Congressman Posey's office that the military, this is the active duty folks, are getting paid, but that doesn't speak to the reservists or the guardsmen.
Well, yeah, in fact, we had a reservist on 2 shows ago, I think it was, and that gentleman who's a master sergeant in the reserves with the 920th Rescue Wing indicated that he's like most reservists. He comes a couple of weekends a month to fulfill his reserve obligation, wear his uniform, and then he's on what they call the ready reserve during the week, and he does the same job. He just doesn't wear a uniform. He's like a civilian employee during that period of time. And he's not doing that anymore because he's been furloughed.
And that's why.
But that's really a reservist being furloughed.
Exactly. There's a great example, because guess what? American Warrior Radio was going to run with our next segment of the Runway Report from the 920th Rescue Wing, but we can't do that because his position as a public affairs NCOIC, non-commissioned officer in charge, he's been furloughed.
Yeah, and there's literally hundreds of thousands of civilian employees who work in critical jobs within the Department of Defense especially, who are continuing to work with no real guarantee that they're going to get paid. There is some legislation that's been submitted to pay these people the back pay that's due to them, and I hope the White House doesn't call that a piecemeal program.
Well, it's going to take, and I mentioned at the outset, it's going to take people making noise. All you listeners to American Warrior Radio, and you know what, even if you're listening to this on the archived edition, okay, but if you're listening live, certainly, I've got a couple phone numbers for you. This is specific to us here in Florida on the Space Coast. Our senators, Rubio and Nelson. Rubio, I'll give you the Rubio, Glenn will give you the Nelson. Rubio, write this number down. You know, Glenn and I are always telling you, grab a pen and paper, because we got to have you folks get educated and make some noise. If you want to call, and I'm urging you to, not if you want to, but please call 202-224-3041. That's 202-224-3041 for Senator Rubio, and
for Senator Nelson, that's 202-224-5274. That's 202-224-5274. And if you're familiar with area codes, those are their direct Washington, D.C. numbers.
I've called them and I've left messages, so if I can do it, you can do it, and we all must do it. I want to share with you real quick, we've got a quick interview with somebody here locally that is making a difference and is supporting the veterans, and especially, or I should say particularly, AVET Project in our core programs and services through her efforts at her tattoo studio. Brandy, can you hear me? Oh, thank you so much for spending a few minutes with us, Brandy. We're beating this drum pretty loudly today because we're very, very concerned about the federal government not funding our military and veterans, which, as you know, and I know you and your husband that run this wonderful tattoo studio, you've been so supportive of AVET Project and helping us with our various drawings and even just taking general donations from patrons that you have come in. What's it mean to you to live in a free country, Brandy? And folks, we're talking with Brandy from the Corner Tattoo. Give out your phone number real quick, Brandy. And you're located right there north of Ron John's, right?
Yeah, right in the Ron John's Free Park Lot at 160
And one thing that you guys have done is we've, through the graciousness of Kel-Tec, we've had some firearms that we've been able to hold drawings for to raise money. You sold a bunch of tickets for that, and we applaud you for that. But you also have, anybody that visits your store can help donate to our programs and services. You've got a wonderful donation bin there. But tell us about a program that you've got that you're excited about there at the tattoo studio.
Well, as always, we give 20% off to all our past and present military. And all winter long, we're doing a $500 all-you-can-sit.
What is it? All you can, $500, and how long? It's just a matter of how long they can sit there and get.
You can sit for the full 12 hours. We're open if you can take it.
Interesting.
Hey, it's a good take on it, and it may be just what somebody needs to say, you know what, I've got that big tattoo that I want to get, and you know, whether you're in the Army, the Navy, the Air Force, the Marines, we've got all these branches of service around, and ink, as it's, you know, the common vernacular, it's becoming more and more popular, and you folks will just basically bend over backwards to help them.
Well, with that kind of deal, we might have a carrier pull into the port one of these days.
Well, you'd love that, wouldn't you? Keep you busy for a while.
I would.
Well, Brandy, I just wanted to get you on as an example of not just a local business, but I know you personally as well, and how much it means to you to live in this great country of ours, and how important it is that we support our troops, but like you said, past and present. So thank you for all your efforts. What about a website that people can check you out at?
Real easy. It's www.thecornertattoo.com.
thecornertattoo.com. These folks are great people. They're great supporters. And Brandy, we want to thank you so much and best wishes to you. Hope you do get a ship pull in here soon and get all kinds of people wanting ink, because you do a wonderful job. And it's a beautiful tattoo studio. You got glass showcases of all kinds of different things.
That's right. Try to keep looking good.
Exactly, and plenty of parking, folks. Don't get worried about that. Right next to Ron John's. As a matter of fact, if you're in Ron John's, you need to skip across the street to the north there and go in and see Brandy and a member of her staff.
Absolutely.
Excellent. Well, again, Brandy, thank you so much for your past support and your continuing support and your passion for our warriors. We really do appreciate it here on American Warrior Radio.
Oh, thank you so much. God bless.
God bless
Bless
you
you.
too.
Thanks.
And see, folks, there's an example of somebody here in the local community that's putting their money where their mouth is and doing it. Well, Glenn and I just gave you numbers that you need to write them down and make the phone call. I don't care if it's in the middle of the night. They're not going to take your call anyway. It's going to go on an answering machine, unless by chance you happen to get an open operator. But I'm going to give them to you again. Here's Senator Rubio. And the reason we're not giving you the House number is because we know we've got the support of the House.
Exactly.
Okay, Congressman Posey and all his Republican brothers and sisters have routinely and regularly for the last many weeks put forth proposals to fund everything that legitimately needs funded. Okay, they have this issue with Obamacare. Again, we're not getting into that kind of politics, but today when Shinseki came out, and again we're in pre-recording this, so hopefully when you hear this Saturday it's all gone by the wayside, but you can still issue an alert to your senators, okay, and your congressmen if you want. Glenn, if they're out of state, what should they do? What's the easiest way for them to find out who their senator is? Just Google them?
The easiest way is just to Google state senate, not state, but not congressional. I don't know. Put Oregon senators.
Exactly, or
Because
Montana, or
of course, yeah, Montana senators. Every state, of course, under the Constitution has 2 senators, so it's not like there's any. Every state's the same. You're going to have 2 senators. They may both be the same party, or they may be different parties.
like we have here in Florida. But the idea is you're going to get a whole roster. If you get to the right page, you're going to have a roster of all the senators, all 100 of them. And you don't want to just stop at your state senators. Call them all.
Oh,
They all,
yeah.
like Glenn said, they work for us, not the other way around.
That's right, and they've obviously forgotten that. We're the bosses and they're the servants, and that's the way it's always supposed to have been. And we can't be held hostage any longer by people that we elected to represent us, not to be dictators over us.
Exactly, and the spirit of bipartisanism and all this nonsense, set it aside, people. It's very, very, very clear to anybody that's going to take an unbiased look at this what's truly happening. And that is the majority in the Senate happens to be Democrat, are not just dragging their feet, they're firmly implanted in not letting any kind of legislation go through unless it includes funding of their gemstone there, the Obamacare.
Yeah, exactly, and then
You're going to risk our military and veterans population and not paying them on November 1st simply so that you can get your Obamacare?
you already got 800,000 civilians that have been furloughed, and I saw something today where a lion's share of those civilian workers are veterans, so you're double hitting them.
Exactly. So while, it's of utmost importance to us here at American Warrior Radio that our military, our active military, that's Guard, Reserve, and the guys and gals that are wearing the uniform 24/7, 365, and their families get what they have earned. I would not expect, except here on American Warrior Radio and AVET Project where we get no paycheck, but you're not going to go to your job and at the end of the week say, oh, that's okay, Mr. Employer, you don't have to pay me this week. It doesn't work that way. You have bills to pay. Well, guess what? They sign on that contract. They have bills to pay. Not only are they dodging bullets and IEDs over in foreign lands, now they're wondering if their families are going to be able to pay the rent.
It's horrible is the word, just terrible. And you need to get acting. That's why we gave you those phone numbers. We need you to act. It's all of us need to act, and we need to act now. And again, this is a pre-recorded program, so if you don't need to act, hallelujah. But if you do need to act, please do it.
Rubio's number, 202-224-3041.
And Senator Nelson is 202-224-5274.
While you're at it, you've got the phone in your hand. I want you to call Congressman Posey and Congressman Jeff Miller and others in our fine state, and let them express to them how much it means to you that they are supporting these appropriate measures to fund the appropriate parts of government, such as our military and our veterans. Posey's number is locally here, 321-632-1776. I love the last four there.
Yeah, me too.
321-632-1776. Jeff Miller, again, you can find all these numbers. Just Google them. They'll come up quite easily, quite readily. Let them know that you support their efforts to continue beating this drum and getting our military and veterans and all the related benefits that they have earned funded through the government. Folks, we're coming to the close of the first segment of American Warrior Radio. I don't want you to go anywhere, okay? Grab another cup of coffee or a glass of iced tea, because in just a couple minutes we're going to have a representative from Congressman Posey, or maybe even the good congressman himself, calling in to share the latest with us here on American Warrior Radio. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back.